Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to wait for a second to make sure that I'm live on Facebook. Yes, it's telling me I am live. I can see myself. Not that I particularly want to, but but here we are. So how is everybody? Good morning, and welcome to First Chapter Fun. It is a delight to be here this morning. I know it's not Tuesday. I know we typically read on Tuesdays and on Thursdays, but Hank and I yesterday decided to postpone our broadcast out of respect for Blackout Tuesday, and so we moved our broadcast from yesterday to today, which is why I'm reading for you today. So thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for joining. I'm thrilled that you're watching. Yesterday, for anybody who saw my attempt at broadcasting yesterday, it was difficult, to say the least, and I have to say that I have already had respect for on-air broadcasters and journalists, but even more so now, in particular for those of colour who are reporting on these stories and things that are going on. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they get through a news segment, because I could, you know, barely manage 1 minute or one sentence really. But today is a new day. I'm here to read to you from Rhys Bowen's wonderful book, Above the Bay of Angels. But before we do that, some of you may not know that Tuesday typically is a big day of the week in publishing. It's generally on Tuesdays that new books are released. And of course, yesterday was a little bit particular for people to... Oh, Hank just said, are you... Yes, I am on Facebook. Hank just said, are you on Facebook? Yes, I am. And I know this because Susan just said hello. So, phew, yes, I am on Facebook. So Tuesday is always a day that when new books get published. And of course, yesterday, many people didn't really feel like pushing their books or plugging their books, these manuscripts that they had been working on for a long time. So I thought that we would do that today, and I'd like to show you 5 books. So I hope you can see this with the glare. This is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. Yes, you can see that on both, because I have my webcam directly in front of, or my phone directly in front of the webcam, so I hope you can see that. There we go. So this is by New York Times bestselling author Britt Bennett, The Vanishing Half, a story about twin sisters who choose to live in very separate worlds. And I can't wait to read this. This is amazing. Then we have, just look at this cover. How gorgeous is that? A Song Below Water. Can you see that? Yes, you can see that. This is by Bethany C. Morrow. It's a YA novel. But it features magic and mythical sirens. I mean, just the cover is just absolutely gorgeous. And this one, this one just makes me smile. Just the cover. Well, another YA, You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson, about a young lady who needs to become prom queen in order to get to college, to get a scholarship to get to college and fulfill her long time dream of becoming a doctor. So that's one. And then let me get you another one. A Song of Wraiths and Ruin here by Roseanne A. Brown. I think you can see that. This is the first book, fantasy, in a duology, so there will be a sequel. And it is inspired by West African folklore. Just absolutely gorgeous. So do check those out. Add them to your TBR, to be read list. And one other one I wanted to mention is The View from Here by Hannah McKinnon. Not me. No. There's another author called Hannah McKinnon. She is American. She is blonde and has straight hair, which clearly I'm not. And she writes these lovely books about families and love, and they're just absolutely gorgeous. So this one came out yesterday. If you ever see a book with Hannah McKinnon as the author name, if there isn't the Mary in there, it's not mine, but you should pick it up because her books are gorgeous. So there you go. Lots of books for you to choose from already. But don't go and add them to your to be read list now. You know, do it later, once I've done reading for you, because today I am reading from Rhys Bowen's See my ring light there? Yes, I have a ring light because, you know, needs must. Rhys Bowen's Above the Bay of Angels. I keep looking at my phone, but I should also look up there at my webcam on Facebook. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. We have Susan on Facebook, we have Bono, we have Cherry, we have Hank, of course, Grace and Tris and Mary, lots of people, Lisa saying hello. And good morning everybody on Instagram too. It's so nice to see you. I'm so pleased that you're all here and you made the switch just for this week from Tuesday to Wednesday on First Chapter Fun. If this is the first time you've joined, this is the place where my partner in fictional crime, Hank Philippi Ryan, and I read twice a week, normally every Tuesday and every Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We don't read from our books, we read from other people's books to introduce you to new authors, to new books, and to, you know, make that to be read pile even longer, because you can never have enough books as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, so today's book, Rhys Bowen, Above the Bay of Angels. So let me introduce you to Rhys. Let's see if I can do this without my glasses, shall we? This will be a test. Let's see if I can get this done. All right. So Rhys is the New York Times and #1 Kindle best-selling author of 45 historical and mystery novels. She's best known for her Royal Spyness historical mysteries featuring Lady Georgie, 35th in line to the throne in 1930s England, as well as several internationally best-selling historical novels, including The Tuscan Child. Her work has garnered her 19 awards to date, including 4 Agathas, and is translated into 29 languages, including Lithuanian and Moldovian. Rhys was born and raised in Britain, but now divides her time between California and Arizona, and she says Arizona is where she escapes the harsh Californian winters. You can find out more on rhysbowen.com. And I forgot to say, sometimes Facebook in particular, but I'm on my desktop on Facebook, but Facebook, sometimes Instagram plays tricks and boots me out. So if that happens, don't worry, if that ever happens, if Hank's reading or if I'm reading, we always go back to the platform that chucked us out and start the broadcast again. But fingers crossed, this will all work out. So let me show you the cover again of Above the Bay of Angels. Oh, that's the iPad when it flips it like that. Above the Bay of Angels. Yep, we see that. That's great. By Rhys Bowen. Now, let me read you, of course, as always, with the permission of the publisher, which is Amazon, and of course, Rhys's permission too. I will read you the back cover copy. Isabella Waverley only means to comfort the woman felled on a London street. In her final dying moments, she thrusts a letter into Bella's hand. It's an offer of employment in the kitchens of Buckingham Palace, and everything the budding young chef desperately wants, an escape from the constructions of her life as a lowly servant. In the stranger's stead, Bella can spread her wings. Arriving as Helen Barton from Yorkshire, she pursues her passion for creating culinary delights, served to the delighted Queen Victoria herself. Best of all, she's been chosen to accompany the Queen to Nice. What fortune! Until the threat of blackmail shadows Bella to the Riviera, and a member of the Queen's retinue falls ill and dies. Having prepared the royal guest's last meal, Bella is suspected of the poisonous crime. An investigation is sure to follow. Her charade will be over, and her new life will come crashing down if it doesn't send her to the gallows. I'm going to show you the cover again, and then I will hop in to chapter 1. Oh, there we go. Rhys Bowen's Above the Bay of Angels. All right, here we go. London, September 1896. If Helen Barton hadn't stepped out in front of an omnibus, I might still be sweeping floors and lighting fires at an ostentatious house in St. John's Wood. But for once, I had followed my father's advice. Carpe diem was one of my father's favourite sayings, Seize the day, take your chances. He usually added, because that might be the only chance you get. He spoke from experience. He was an educated man from a good family, and had known better times. As the son of a second son, he could expect to inherit neither a title nor the property that would have come with it, and was sent out to India to make something of himself, becoming an officer in the Bengal Lancers. He had married my mother, a sweet and delicate creature he met on one of his visits home. It was soon clear that she couldn't endure the harsh conditions of Bengal, so Daddy had been forced to resign his commission and return to live in England. From what Daddy told us, it had been made evident to him as a young man that he could expect no financial help from his uncle, the Earl. He never told us why, or what the rift had occurred within his family, but he was clearly bitter about it. However, he had finally fallen on his feet in a way, and had acquired what was considered a prestigious position. He was in charge of guest relations at the Savoy, London's new luxury hotel. His ability to speak good French and mingle with crowned heads had made him popular at the hotel. He had patted the hands of elderly Russian countesses and arranged roulette parties for dashing European princes, for which he received generous tips. We had lived quite happily in the small town of Hampstead, on the northern fringes of London. My younger sister Louisa and I attended a private school. We had a woman who came to clean and cook for us. It was not an extravagant life, but a pleasant one. Until it all came crashing down, when the demon drink overcame my father. He worked at an establishment where the alcohol flowed freely among the guests. When invited, he took a glass, as it would have been rude to refuse. So who would notice if he later finished off a bottle? I remember the first time he came home drunk. "Roddy, where have you been?" my mother asked him when he arrived home at 10 o'clock. "We waited for you. I was worried." "None of your business, woman." He spat out the words. My mother winced as if he had struck her. My little sister grabbed my hand. We had never seen our father like this. He was normally so amiable and adored my mother. "Roddy, have you been drinking?" Mummy said coldly. "Just being sociable with the clients. Part of the job, don't you know?" he said. Then he added, his voice rising aggressively, "I have to work for my living, or have you forgotten that? After all, it was because of you that I had to give up my commission in India and take a menial job bowing and scraping to those who should be my equals. Now, where's my dinner?" I saw my mother's horrified stare as she blinked back tears. After that day, nothing was the same. It felt as if we were walking on eggshells. We never knew when he'd come home or what kind of mood he'd be in. Sometimes he was as jovial and affectionate as ever, but other times it was as if he'd turned into a monster I didn't recognise. Louisa and I spent a lot of time hiding away in our bedroom. Mummy tried hard at first, begging him to stop drinking and think of his family, but nothing she said reached him, and in the end she just seemed to give up and fade like a wilting flower. She had never been strong to begin with. I suppose we had all been dreading what happened next. My father arrived home in the middle of the afternoon, announcing that he had been dismissed from his job. All because of some stupid Russian woman who said she'd seen my helping myself to a little sip from a bottle of scotch. They took her word against mine, can you believe it? Who'd want to work at a place like that? I'm well rid of it. "But Roddy, what will we do?" my mother asked. "How will we pay the rent?" "I'll find something else, don't you worry," he said breezily. "A chap like me, I'll be snapped up in no time at all." But he wasn't. He tried in vain to find another position, but without a reference, no respectable establishment wanted him. We watched him sink lower and lower into depression and drunkenness. We gave up our servant. I tried to be grown up and take over the housework, as Mummy seemed to have no energy for even the most basic of tasks. Daddy seemed genuinely concerned for her, but it didn't stop his visits to the public house. It was a bitter winter that year, and the price of coal had gone up. We spent our evenings around the kitchen table where the stove provided warmth. Mummy developed a nasty cough. I thought she should see a doctor, but Daddy dismissed the idea. "It's just a bad cold, Bella. Your mother always likes to dramatise things. You know that." It might have started as a cold, but it soon turned into pneumonia, and 3 days later, she was dead. I couldn't believe she was gone. Neither could my father. "My precious darling Winnie," he said. "It's all my fault, it's all my fault." And he actually wept. He and Louisa and I hugged each other while the tears flowed. My mother was a genteel and sweet person who adored my mother. They said she died of pneumonia, but I think it was of a broken heart. We moved to a squalid 2-room flat above a butcher's shop, with only cold water and an outside lavatory. Father occasionally picked up work, writing letters for the illiterate, tutoring in French, but nothing kept the wolf far from the door. I suppose I had no idea how bad our situation really was until one day, just before my 15th birthday, he announced that he had found a position for me. I was to leave the school that I adored and become a servant in a big house, so that I'd earn money to feed Father and Louisa, and someone else would have to feed and clothe me. I was more than shocked. I was mortified. We might not have been rich, but I was from a good family. "A servant? You want me to be a servant?" I could hardly stammer the words. "I feel as terrible about it as you do, my darling child," he said. "But the truth is that I can't afford to feed you. We'll be out on the street if someone doesn't pay the rent, and I can't seem to find a position. So your sister and I are relying on you at this moment." I wanted to shout at him, to tell him that we might have enough money to scrape by if he didn't visit the public house so frequently. But I'd been brought up to be the good child, to obey my parents. I was doubly shocked when I found out that the house where I would be sent to work belonged to a nouveau riche man who had made money in the garment business. His factories turned out cheap blouses for working girls. He and his wife were loud-mouthed and commonly ostentatious. I stood outside, staring up at the gables and turrets of an incredibly ugly house. "Daddy, please don't make me do this," I pleaded. "Not as a servant to these people. I realise I must leave school, but there must be something else I can do." "It's only for a short while, Bella," he said, patting my hand. "I promise as soon as I'm on my feet again I'll bring you home. Until then you are helping to make sure that your little sister does not starve." What could I say to that? I realised then that he had always been a great manipulator, using his charm to get my mother to agree with whatever scheme he had in mind at the moment. So I went to work for Mr. and Mrs. Tilley at the ugly house in St. John's Wood. They kept a butler, a parlour-maid, a footman, 2 housemaids, a cook and a scullery maid. As the lowest housemaid, I was responsible for rising at 5 in the morning, lighting the copper and the stove, then carrying heavy scuttles of coal to the bedrooms to make sure that the family awoke to warmth. It was back-breaking, soul-destroying work. I had to share a bed with Poppy, the scullery maid, in a freezing attic room. Mercifully, I was so tired that I fell asleep instantly every night. It felt like a nightmare from which I couldn't wake up. Then one day, Mrs. Tilley was entertaining. She liked to entertain frequently, coffee mornings and tea parties and extravagant dinners. All of these events meant extra work for us servants. We went through a frenzy of polishing silverware, making sure there wasn't a speck of dust on the mahogany table that seated 30. And, in my case, ensuring that the fires were supplied with enough coal to keep them burning brightly. On this occasion, it was a tea party. Cook had been baking all morning, scones and sponge cakes and shortbreads, so that the kitchen was full of wonderful aromas, and all afternoon she had been making little tea sandwiches, cucumber, egg and cress, smoked salmon. After Elsie, the parlourmaid, had gone up to the drawing room with the tea things, Cook noticed that she had forgotten to put the macaroons onto the tray. She thrust them into my hands. "Quick! Take them up before Mrs. T notices, or there'll be hell to pay," she said. I ran out of the kitchen with the dish, up the stone steps and through the green baize door that separated the servants from the real world. Female voices were coming from the drawing room. I crept in. Elsie had already put the tray on the trolley and was pouring tea. I hesitated, unsure what to do next, when Mrs. Tilly spotted me. "What do you want, girl?" she asked. I've brought the macaroons, ma'am," I said. "They weren't quite ready when Elsie carried up the tray." She heard my refined accent and frowned. "Are you trying to ape your betters, girl?" Her only accent, her own accent still carried an undercurrent of her East End upbringing. "No, ma'am. I've always spoken this way. My father was a gentleman." "Then what in God's name are you doing here?" one of the other ladies asked. "My mother died. My father became too ill to work, and I need to support my little sister," I replied. "There are not many jobs available to a 15-year-old. "You poor child," the woman said. "Life can be cruel." Then she took a cream puff from the plate and bit into it. "You'll never believe what I heard about Sylvia," she said, her upper lip now lined with a delicate moustache of cream. "Do tell." The ladies leaned forward, and I was instantly forgotten. You might have thought that my lot would have improved after that moment. It did, but only slightly. I still had to get up early to light the fires, but when Mrs. Tilly was entertaining, she'd make sure I served them in the drawing room. "Her father was an aristocrat," she'd say in a stage whisper. "Her parents died. I took her in, poor little thing." I'd stand there like a statue, determined to keep my face a mask of stone to show them I didn't care. I wanted these self-satisfied, patronising ladies to know that whatever they said, they could never break me. "One day," I would whisper to myself. I wasn't sure what I meant by it, only that if I could just hang on long enough, then I'd find a way to escape, and I'd make something of my life. That was the opening part of the first chapter of Above the Bay of Angels by Rhys Bowen, a historical mystery. Sounds so enticing and so interesting. So I wonder how she takes the place of this young lady called Helen Barton, and what happens next. And then she's accused of murdering someone royal, one of the royals. That's not going to end well, is it? Or is it? You'll have to read it to find out. So that was today's episode of First Chapter Fun. I hope you enjoyed that reading. This is a new setup for me. I'm not normally in my office. I've changed locations, so this is, I'm not sure if I'm looking in the right places. Facebook here and Instagram here, but it seemed to have worked all right. And I forgot to mention that, of course, you can leave questions and comments for Rhys. I'm not sure if she joined. I hope she joined, because I wasn't able to scroll through the... Yes, she is. Yes, she says she's driving through the mountains. How wonderful. So you can, of course, leave questions and comments for Rhys directly on Facebook. A little bit trickier right now on Instagram Live. I mean, you can, but I will post this episode on the Instagram feed of First Chapter Fun, so you'll be able to leave Rhys some questions there. Ask her about the book, ask her about her writing process, ask her about all those awards. Plenty and plenty of questions that you can ask her. So once again, that was the opening to Above the Bay of Angels by Rhys Bowen. There we go, you can see that there. Yes, you can. And tomorrow, I normally say Thursday, tomorrow is Thursday, but it's tomorrow, it's going to be this one, Have You Seen Me by Kate White, which has a phenomenal premise, and Kate is absolutely wonderful. So I can't wait for you to be introduced to this book as well. So that will be tomorrow, Thursday, usual time of 11:30 a.m. Eastern, and I hope that you will join us for the reading of Have You Seen Me by Kate White. So until then, until tomorrow, please, as always, stay safe, stay kind, and we will see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching.